The White Sox lost offense returned to avoid getting swept by the Diamondbacks. Now, can this team avoid taking a step back like it usually does? Let's discuss on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan, a contributor for SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, after going 18 innings with only a single run against the Diamondbacks, the White Sox lineup exploded for 7 runs yesterday. A nice way to avoid getting swept, but it just seems like this club takes 1 step forward and then 2 steps back. So let's discuss why. Let's add trying to avoid that to the list of things it would be nice to see for the rest of the season in the first segment. Then I do want to discuss how the White Sox, Sox fans, and MLB has responded to Ketel Marte enduring an inappropriate comment from a fan in Tuesday's game. And finally, I want to discuss Lenyn Sosa's 2 home runs and how maybe there's a chance he could clear a bar to become a value player. Okay, so on Tuesday, I got this email from Everydayer, my guy Sydney. He wrote me this. Todd, I think Will is the guy, but he failed to prepare his team for the opening game against Arizona. In short, they were flat, uninterested, and awful. Pitching, hitting, and fielding are not among the 16th Pope Leo's abilities. This team doesn't have the luxury to take any series for granted. 1 step forward, 3 steps back. Now, the reason why I share this email is, not to solicit emails to lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Although, feel free to send any questions, topic ideas, or if you're just looking for an electronic baseball pen pal, I will talk baseball with you. I might not be able to respond right away. It might be brief, but I'll talk baseball with you as long as it's respectable and it doesn't get any awkward or weird from both sides, that type of stuff. But the one reason why I wanted to share it was it is that 1 step forward, 3 steps back comment that really actually has been a major theme for the White Sox this season. And remember, the goal for this season is just to see overall progress in the big picture to provide hope of better days that will hopefully come by 2027. Because as I talked about a few episodes ago, it doesn't sound like they're going to be doing any major spending to accelerate the timeline to 2026. And I do believe we will have some baseball in 2027. I don't think it's going to be a full season, but I do think at some point it's going to be just like the pandemic. The owners and the players are going to be like, look, there's just too much money to sacrifice. So I do feel like we might have a shortened 2027 season. And in terms of like seeing progress, we've gotten glimpses. I mean, you saw glimpses like when the White Sox went up to Toronto and took 2 of 3 from the Blue Jays. And then they actually won a game after being down in the 7th. However, they followed up by coming home and scoring just a run over the first 2 games against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Decent pitching, but, I mean, come on. They made a couple of those starters look like they were going to win the Cy Young. 1 step forward, 2 or 3 steps back is what it always seems to be happening this season. But then in yesterday's game, the offense breaks through by crushing 3 home runs, 2 from Lenyn Sosa, and actually taking advantage of a struggling Zach Gallen, who, man, his decline is going to cost him millions this offseason. I mean, you were talking about an ace pitcher just, 2 years ago? I mean, he's terrible. Doesn't trust his fastball. Hangs a bunch of curveballs. He's bad. You also had Sean Burke. He had a second straight start that was very solid after getting completely roughed up in Houston. But on the flip side, you had Shane Smith in this series with his second consecutive terrible start. So it'd be nice to see this club at least just put together some positive momentum going forward throughout the rest of the season. They are on track to obviously have a better year, another figurative dollar in the 2024 mention jar, than last season. I believe the projections is they're going to win 52 games, which will blast, past the, which will at least hit the over on most preseason projections. and still give them the best odds in the Tankathon standings. But hey, why not see if you can win just a few more games? Because as I said, at least, and I had this terrible comment or two was like, oh, make up your mind. I have made up. I'm telling you, just positive momentum, be in games, try to find a way to win some of these games that you've had a chance to lose. But I can't control this team taking one step forward, 3 steps back. So it would be nice to, can you build some positive momentum? However, going to be tough during this next stretch of schedule because here comes the Giants rolling into town for 3 games. And then it's a trip out west to play 3 against the Dodgers. And then obviously you get this is the worst team in baseball bowls out in Colorado against the Rockies, but White Sox don't play well on the road. So, it's going to be tough. And, Luis Robert Jr. left the game after the top of the first inning with hamstring tightness. So right off the bat, it's going to be hard for the Sox to maintain a positive step forward, not because Luis Robert Jr. left the game with hamstring tightness, but just because it's going to be a tough stretch schedule. But, at some point, you would love, at some point in the season, to establish a win streak that lasts longer than 3 games, because that's their longest win streak this season, 3. You would love to see Burke continue to have starts where he allows just 2 runs on 5 hits, walks 2, and strikes out 7. And how about more multi-hit games from Kyle Teal? The rookie was outstanding, 3 for 4 with a run and 2 RBI. Had a few rough moments behind the plate in terms of fielding, but, for the most part, pretty good. Maybe some more home runs from Andrew Benintendi, who actually crushed a solo shot in the first inning. And that's honestly how you're going to maintain positive momentum and avoid taking these 2 or 3 steps back. You need is consistent production at the plate. Not a game here or there from Benintendi or a great game from Lenyn Sosa after going 0 for 5 to start the series. And I will say this, with Luis Robert Jr. leaving the game with hamstring tightness, this hope for a hot streak or continuing on, maybe to eventually he starts at least hitting a little bit to improve his trade value, it's got to stop. While it does sound like it's going to be something minor, might not require an IL stint. If it does, oh my God, that's just going to tank his trade value, because then you're going to have every team going, see, it's always hurt. But it's just another example of him having a bad season. Not worth keeping beyond this season. He hasn't earned the $20 million option. And even if it is a minor hamstring issue that doesn't require an IL stint, you best believe contenders are still going to try to use that as another reason to offer pennies on the dollar, while the GM is still trying to recoup, as close to full 2023 value as he can. So to me, Robert Jr., he just now exists. He exists. He's on the team, but hopefully not for long. I'm going to look at other veterans and put it on them to hopefully try to provide better support. And every day, as you've heard me talk about it, but I'm talking about like Benintendi and Sosa to provide this young core better offensive support. And it was a nice blend of Benintendi and Sosa providing offensive support to a young future piece like Teal, who was chipping in offense. You even had Mike Tauchman going 3 for 4. And then the bullpen kept the Diamondbacks from coming back. So to maintain a step forward instead of constantly taking steps back, get production from the young core in the lineup of Miguel Vargas, Chase Maedroth, Edgar Carroll, and Kyle Teal. But also let's start getting some consistent production from vets like Benintendi, Sosa, and Tauchman. And if you have more consistent, better starts from like Burke, and hopefully Shane Smith bounces back while getting solid starts from Adrian Hauser, and then the bullpen maybe starting to nail down games with, being led by a promising flame-throwing arm like Grant Taylor, maybe there's a chance that you can take a positive step forward. Well, another good thing happened yesterday. The White Sox and the White Sox fan base appropriately addressed that terrible fan comment directed toward Diamondback second baseman Ketel Marte regarding his mother who passed away in a car accident in 2017. And I wanted to discuss how the White Sox and the White Sox fans appropriately responded after the break on Locked On White Sox. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And think about it. You don't got time to waste going through an automated system. You got to get the job done. You got to get the job done right. And you need the right parts, so Supply House wants to make sure you are taken care of. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of skilled professionals already taking advantage. And hey, now it's your turn. And I've been telling my brother-in-law, he's in the plumbing business, convince his company, use Supply House with all the great advantages they have and great customer service they offer. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. Start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you haven't done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. Okay, so for once, I think the White Sox handled a controversial situation correctly. Because there's usually three ways to do things: the right way, the wrong way, and the White Sox way, which is usually, sorry, I got an itch in my nose for those watching on YouTube, which is usually even worse than the wrong way. And as I said on yesterday's show, when it came to the fan trying to heckle or possibly bully Ketel Marte when he made the comment about his mother who passed away in 2017, which caused Marte to basically break down into tears, really all that could be said, at least when it comes to what the fan said, is not cool. You crossed the line. It's the type of comments that you expect to see on social media where people hide behind usernames. And only this fan pretty much tried to hide behind, well, I'm in the stands. There's a barricade in front of me. Would you have said that to his face to face? And if you did, well, inappropriate, low blow. But people cross the line. They do. Especially if they feel like they can hide behind something like a username or a barricade. And he got caught, and now the fan is suspended indefinitely from all 30 MLB stadiums. So first of all, appropriate response by MLB. You can think it's harsh? No. I mean, again, there's no law that says you have the right to go to a Major League Baseball game. They can refuse service. And what the White Sox did really well, and the fans too, was condemning the comment and actually showing support for Marte. They put this up on the video board, and then they shared it on the Twitter account. This is at White Sox. I'm sharing the image for those watching on YouTube. Basically says, we're with you at Ketel_Marte4, and it has, baseball is a family. The White Sox community supports Ketel Marte. They even had Ozzie Guillen, CHSN Ozzie Guillen went and talked to Marte. I mean, I think that is appropriate to say, hey, we support you. That fan is an outlier. And while I'm sure we're going to get Cubs fans jumping in here, trying to point out White Sox fans, they can be rude and crude and profane. Going to cite up probably that drunken father and son who once jumped onto the field and attacked that, the first base umpire. That was but first of all, I want to be like, that was like 25 years ago. And also, if I remember the story correctly, that was one of the rare days the Cubs and the Sox were in town, and they were at Wrigley, I believe, drinking before. But also, if you're going to loop Sox fans into being profane, I've sat in the Wrigley Field bleachers too. And trust me, there are a lot of things said that would basically make a priest blush. And there are a lot of things that you're not going to say on Sunday at church. Let me tell you that. There's not a bunch of choir boys sitting back there. And definitely, I've been to Bears games where, the Bears unite us. And, I've even said I will never take my daughter to a game at the Bears with, when I was a kid, some of the language that I heard. A lot of racial and homophobic slurs, too, which were just, I would never want to expose a kid to, for example. And again, they're just outliers. I'm not saying that that's the whole fan base, but I'm sure Cubs will, fans will try to jump in and say that, but it's like, this guy was an outlier. And what the White Sox and the White Sox fans, when they cheered him, and showed signs that said that we were supporting, saying, we condemn that guy. He's not one of us. That's not us. And again, appropriately, the White Sox saying, we're with you, man. That wasn't cool. Whereas, think about it, like when a fan did get shot in a stadium, which if you want to cite that, well, yeah, it happened. You had the owner actually trying to create some magic bullet theory that it came from outside the stadium. Even though I'm not, going to say how or what, but, they did have the magic bullet theory. Or you have the White Sox doubling down on controversial signings like bringing in Mike Clevenger with all those issues. And again, I'm not going to debate wokeness here. I'm just mentioning in the vacuum, it was controversial with the domestic abuse allegations. Whether they were proven or not, it was controversial, and the Sox brought him back twice. But this time, the White Sox did the right thing by saying to Marte, got your back, and the fans too. And they gave the message, whether it was yesterday's game or on social media, to say, that dude made a terrible representation of us. This isn't who we are. We do try to be okay. We do try. I mean, and yeah, it's one thing if Marte broke down into tears, if the fan just yelled something like, hey, Marte, you stink. That's not crossing the line. That comes with the territory of playing on the road. Or screaming to like Josh Naylor, I hate how you crush our souls. That type of stuff. I can't stand you because all you do is hit home runs. I mean, that's the stuff that happens on the road. And if that was the comment and Marte breaks down into tears, well, then yeah, toughen up. So there are things that can be screamed at opposing players that is within the context of, hey, that's just being a professional player. But when it comes to things like mentioning family or screaming racial or homophobic slurs, then you've crossed the line. Then that's not acceptable. And if you think that I'm being woke here, well, first, I would suggest you stop applying your values on other people. That's just my suggestion. I'm preparing also to read comments. Oh, this is just woke. This is all sensitivity. This is generational, blah, blah, blah. It wouldn't have bothered me. Well, if it wasn't said, if it wouldn't have bothered me, argument completely falls flat because it's not you. Not everyone shares your value system, and that's okay as long as it's not breaking any laws or harming others. It's okay to disagree. It's okay for someone to say, you know what, I don't appreciate that. And maybe instead of just being like, well, it doesn't bother me, maybe say, oh, you know what, it could bother somebody. And just because you have free speech doesn't mean you have to say it. Also, this isn't the late 1980s when In Living Color made it cool to make yo mama jokes. Jamie Foxx has evolved well beyond as a comedian. And also, remember, the dude lost his mother in a car accident. Even if it was 8 years ago, it was clear by his reaction. He was very close. And while these ball players make great money, it doesn't remove their humanity. So thankfully, the White Sox and the fan base showed some grace and love like a human being should when we see someone in some pain. When we see someone feeling a little down. It's called empathy. And it's fine to show some sympathy. Okay, so I want to circle back to Sosa's 2 home run day, and there might be a chance Sosa could go from being a Godfather 3 type player to an actual value player, and I want to discuss it after the break on Locked On White Sox. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. And FanDuel's traditional money lines and spreads and over-unders, they're fun to play. But I always maintain, if you want to win big, or at least double or even triple your money, then go with FanDuel's parlays, props, and futures. So for example, Detroit might be the first team to reach 50 wins, but they're still plus 800 the last time I checked to win the World Series. So say you put $10 on that right now, and Detroit does go on to win the whole thing. That's $80 in your pocket, and who cares if it's a division rival? This season is lost for Chicago's AL team, so why not make some money? You could potentially triple your money if you say put $10 on Garrett Crochet winning the Cy Young. That's currently at plus 300. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode and recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, or they get their podcasts. The show's available on all major podcast platforms. So I've always maintained Lenyn Sosa is the only good quote in the Godfather 3 type player. I mean, just when you think you're out on him, he does something to draw you back in. And 2 homers yesterday was the latest. And by the way, the one thing I have noticed, and I believe I did hear it on the TV broadcast. If I'm wrong, I may have misheard it because they didn't really show the flags blowing, but I do believe I heard that the wind was blowing out. And if that is the case, the one thing Sosa has done well that I've noticed with the wind blowing out at right field is if he can square up a pitch, he's going to put a good whack on it, but also get it high enough in the air where the wind just carries it out. And that's actually smart, honestly. And I'm a little surprised because when you look at Sosa's terrible instincts in the field, it's actually impressive that he figured out, hey, this is how I could crush some home runs at right field if the wind's blowing out. Just get it in the air. Let the wind blow it out. I mean, he did get some good contact on both those home runs, but I mean, he definitely got it high enough to where he could let the air push it out. And I don't care how you hit a home run, whether it's just straight up crushing it or letting physics do its thing. As long as it goes over the fence and it's a run, awesome. But he does need to hit for more power to start proving he can actually provide some value, because right now he's only providing a decent average. And if he can be positioned correctly when playing second base, he can feel the ball. Otherwise, if he stops hitting for a decent average, there is right now nothing there. And that's why I've always maintained, ride him until he stops hitting for average. And it may be old school to hit for average now. And remember, too, it's just decent. But if Chase Mydroth has to play shortstop long-term, then Sosa hitting for average at least maybe provides a decent bridge until Jacob Gonzalez, Jarrell Perez, or Sam Antonacci is ready to whether they play short, moving Mydroth back to second. But then I did look at Sosa's slugging percentage after those 2 home runs, and it's over 400, the average mark for slug. And I thought to myself, oh my God, he's slugging 416. Holy bleep. If he can slug over 400, there's a chance that he actually does provide value by doing this thing called doing damage at the plate. Remember, hitting for average has now become an old school thing. You want to do damage at the plate. You know, pitching director Brian Bannister has said that's what hitters are trying to do. They're trying to do damage. Doubles, triples, home runs. It's almost become like a walk is just as good as a single unless it's a runners with scoring position. Then yeah, if you can hit an RBI single, awesome. You know, that's one of the reasons why OPS is now more valued than average. Can you at least just get on base? And if you do get on base, can you do more than just get to first base? And the one thing that's been lacking on Sosa's resume has been doing damage at the plate. It's the one reason, remember, he kept getting demoted in 2024. Another figurative dollar into that jar. Was he was not hitting for power. I believe that was the second time that he got sent down. It was like, okay, great. He's hitting I think he was hitting 240. But it was like all singles. But he already has 6 home runs on the season, 416 slug. His WRC plus is now at 99, 1 below league average, and his F4 is at 0.8. He's actually 2 outs above average playing second too, although -2 defensive run save there. But hey, he's meeting the criteria for potential value player in some instances at the plate. One of the reasons why, though, there's just potential is his outside zone swing rate is at 47.2%. And he just has a 2.9 walk rate. So if he's ever going to get to at least that solid OPS of 750, it's not going to be mostly made up of his on-base percentage. I mean, the guy still freely swings. And I don't know if he's ever going to learn plate discipline. But if he can continue to slug over 400, continuing to put the ball in the air that can carry over the fence while hitting for a decent average, then maybe possibly there's some solid value baseball player there that the front office could consider at least, hey, maybe this is the second baseman for a while. Not sure if it will mean he's the second baseman on the next competitive team, but definitely that, if he can keep slugging over 400, get that WRC plus over 100, maybe you start to realize, hey, he can actually raise our floor. And that's one of the things that this rebuild does need to produce, guys that can produce raising floor. And just remember, I'm just saying maybe the possibility exists. Because again, he's one of the guys that I talked about in the first segment that you want to look at, can you provide some consistent offensive support that maybe allows the White Sox to start to take some more positive steps forward instead of one step forward, 3 steps back. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'll be back tomorrow to discuss how I would grade the White Sox players after the halfway point of the season, because the White Sox just played 81 games. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the Sox needing to stop taking 2 or 3 steps back after taking a step forward. The White Sox and the fans showing good support for Ketel Marte, and if Lenyn Sosa can actually be a value player. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.